Through the darkness, a lone paddle steamer slowly makes its way along the River Orwell, retracing a journey to the port of Ipswich, which it hadn't undertaken for several decades. As dawn breaks the following day, the PS Waverley, the world's last seagoing paddle steamer, shows her true glory as the sunlight glistens off her funnel stacks, whilst her crew prepared for an epic journey to the centre of London, stopping at some of the piers of the East Coast, which was so famous for the paddle steamer visits of years gone by when holiday makers would move from the city to the coast and back again. This is a story of the Waverley to the Thames, a trip that wouldn't be possible if it were not for the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society, Waverley Excursions, and a group of individuals who had a dream to keep this small pleasure alive. The history of the paddle steamer is a somewhat recent one, and one that centred very much around the River Clyde. From a single craft called the Comet at the beginning of the 19th century, within just a few years, numerous steamers were conveying holidaymakers up and down the Scottish rivers on excursions. This earned a nickname by the Scots, and this is an appalling Scottish impersonation, by the way, going doonthewatter. Yeah, we'll leave that there. Such was the success of paddle steamers up until the late 19th century. Many ocean-going ships were also powered by midship paddles. The original Waverley, from which the current vessel shares a name, was built in 1899 but was sadly lost after sustaining significant damage at Dunkirk in 1940. The shallow draft of the paddle steamers of around 6 feet allowed these ships to get almost onto the beach. As the 20th century progressed, many paddle steamers were withdrawn from service and scrapped. Following the Second World War, the railway-controlled paddle steamer fleet had dwindled significantly. The current Waverley was commissioned by the LNER Railway Company and took to the water on the 2nd of October 1946. It was subsequently fitted out with a 2,100 horsepower triple expansion steam engine, and following fit out, entered service under the skipper John Cameron in 1947. The PS Waverley was in service with LNER for little more than a year before nationalisation of many of these smaller rail companies occurred, and it was transferred into the new nationalised British Transport Commission. In 1957, the Waverley was transferred into their subsidiary, the Caledonian Steam Packet Company. By 1964, only the paddle steamers the Caledonia and Waverley were left in service, but the withdrawal of the Caledonia at the end of 1969 left just the Waverley as the world's last seagoing paddle steamer. By the close of 1973, Calmac, the owners, agreed to sell Waverley to the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society for just £1, and the Waverley Steam Navigation Company was now founded. Since entering service in preservation in 1975, the PS Waverley has been reboilered but retains the original triple expansion engine, which, at nearly 80 years old, has been described by at least one engineer as barely worn in. The excursion today was going to take us from Ipswich underneath the Orwell Bridge, stopping off at Clacton to pick up some more passengers, and then off down to the Thames, passing under both the Dartford crossing and then Tower Bridge in darkness. But before we could do all of that, we needed to take a small bus trip from Ipswich railway station on exactly the same day as every rail service had been replaced by a bus. But this is where the journey began. Steamer replacement bus service. This is us sitting at ABP security for the last 10 minutes, not letting anybody in, one bus at a time maybe, with 500 people to move from Ipswich railway station down onto the quay. I think there's going to be a slight delay. The Waverley in the early morning sun looked simply splendid, and it didn't take long before we were on board, and whilst most passengers were making themselves comfortable and getting ready for the journey ahead, I wanted to go down and have a closer look at the engines and the paddle wheels before we set off.
Another gangway here, speedy boarding.
What's with the Submariner?
Oh, yeah. Put all my sins, I went under the hood.
I wanted to have a look at the engines and the paddle wheels before we got underway and tell you a little bit more about them. The engine itself was originally built in Greenock in 1944 and develops 2,100 horsepower through its 3 cylinders of 24, 39 and 66 inches. It's an amazing engine, and I was watching it as it went through its oil cycle and made that delightful noise. I love that sound, it's just really wonderful. The original boiler, which had been fitted in 1946, was converted to run on oil in 1956, but the first reboilering that occurred was in 1981 when the vessel was reboilered with a Babcock steam block type boiler. In 2000, this was replaced with a pair of Cochrane Thermax boilers during the Heritage rebuild, with each boiler costing around £220,000 at the time. They were designed to hold 20 tonnes of water but could generate 5.5 tonnes of steam per hour at £180 per square inch. Even though these boilers still had life left in them, these were replaced in 2020 just to give the vessel some longevity with a new pair of Cochrane boilers which were designed to burn marine gas oil. Incidentally, there are 11 steam engines on board the ship, including the winch, capstan, various pumps, the reversing gear and the steam tiller, and the generators during the 2020 refit were also replaced as well. The paddle wheels are quite unique, with each having 8 timber paddle floats which are 11 foot by 3 foot in size, and the float diameter of 13 foot 10 inches to the float centres. These turn at 42 RPM and travel at 30 feet per second, whilst the ship itself travels through the water at 24 feet per second. These are connected to the engine via a main crankshaft which is solidly attached to both wheels, and so they cannot turn independently of each other. Altogether, the vessel burns 154 gallons or 700 litres of low sulphur medium fuel each hour and propels the boat at 14 knots.
Absolutely fascinating. Tell me about the engines, if we can.
Well, it's a triple expansion steam engine built by Wright and Blackmore.
Yeah, I'm just getting you on a little YouTube.
I'm just going to lie to you now.
Yeah, fuel stick diesels, that's what they are.
Black smokes.
Yeah, they look gorgeous.
Just like all the crew that I met on Waverley, the engineers were willing to talk about the steam engines, the boilers and the paddles and anything you wanted. Had it not been that I'd already had a conversation with them and talked about my past at sea, I would have probably got some better answers. But these were wonderful chaps and I really had a great chat with them before we moved on. But now it was time for us to leave the berth and the journey was well and truly underway.
Please take care as you move around the ship today. Children should be supervised at all times and never lifted above the height of the ship's rails. Personal belongings should not be left unattended at any time. If any passengers do require to collect tickets for today's sailing, the purser's office will be opening shortly and you'll find the purser's office on the promenade deck just behind the funnels. Thank you very much and enjoy your cruise on this today.
As we made our way slowly down the River Orwell, we passed marinas that were so familiar: Wolverston, Levington, and then on to Shotley. where prominently behind stands HMS Ganges. The mast has just recently been re-stepped and reinstated, and the site, a former naval academy, is being developed.
I joined Ganges as a 15-year-old boy on the 6th of January 1959. That makes me 80 years of age. I'm a trustee at the museum, which is a thriving museum, a charity and free to the public, which changed dramatically, certainly from the days when I was a boy at Ganges. As you can see by travelling past it, the port of Felixstowe is now just about the largest port in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
The harbour itself hasn't changed a great deal. Commercially, all of the area has been expanded, and insofar as where the old Ganges base is, that's now a housing estate. They're still literally building around 300 houses there.
Yes.
And of course it's a marina as well. Some of the old buildings have been retained and they have yet to be redeveloped, but there'll be hopefully a museum up there on the old part of the base. We're currently on the bottom end of it, in a building owned by the Marina Company. We have yet to get any clarification as to where we subsequently will have to move to, but going back to the old buildings, they're going to be a combination of a sports hall, a restaurant, various other commercial enterprises there. There'll be a care home and a small hotel, and what was the old swimming pool, the fabric of the building is being kept, and there'll be a sports hall.
As we cleared the Orwell estuary past Felixstowe and made our way out to sea, our next port of call was going to be Clacton Pier, but it was time to drop the pilot off and for me to go and have a look around and see some of the areas of the ship that I hadn't seen just yet. I particularly liked some of the original features around the ship, such as this post box and the purser's office, but the attention to detail was just superb. There are two main passenger areas in the ship, the saloon with an excellent bar, and I must admit I might have participated in one or two beers as I wasn't having to have the responsibility of helming, and also a fantastic mess room where fish and chips were the must-have order of the day.
And this is our first port of call, Clacton. Doing what the Waverley does best, which is go pier to pier, and that's what it did do back in the old days.
Like so many other piers around the coast of Britain, the one at Clacton was built primarily to bring goods and services to the town and take them away back to the capital of London. The first visitor on the opening day was a steamship from a Woolwich Steam Packet Company, bringing a director and 200 guests with her, and it was only later, as the Victorian holiday boom grew, that a decision was taken to lengthen the pier and build the pavilion. For many years, steamships and paddle steamers like the Waverley visited. It was a delight to see Waverley doing exactly what she was built to do and returning this pier just for a day to the purpose for which it was once designed.
Here we are moored up at Clacton Pier, and the mooring here at Clacton Pier, which was designed for paddle steamers, hasn't been used by any other paddle steamer except Waverley in the last 50 or 60 years. The last time Waverley was here was a good few years ago, and it's a welcome return to see this boat back doing what it used to do on the East Coast so many years ago. Of course, one of the benefits of being a paddle steamer is it has a particularly low draft. It can get through water where most twin screw vessels can't. The downside is it can only operate on a relatively flat sea. It gives these wide decks across the middle, making pier operations such as much easier than they would be for a vessel that has to moor with the whole length of the boat across a quay line. And Clacton Pier with the lifeboat house halfway up the pier itself there.
Before we knew it, we were back at sea again, enjoying the benefits of the paddle steamer. Having such a shallow draft, it meant it could pick its way through some of the shallower and narrower channels that define the journey from the Essex coast down to the Thames. As the Waverley pushed on southward, I went to have another look at the engine, now in full swing. It really is a testament to those that look after the vessel over the winter and the expertise that keep an engine such as this running. I also discovered a small bar towards the stern of the ship where I bumped into two wonderful people who keep their boat on the Broads, and we had a lovely chat about the boats and their boating history. We chatted for a while, and it was wonderful to hear the experiences of how their boating adventures had developed over the years. But we were pushing into the Thames estuary now, and I was keen to have a look and see what had changed since the last time I'd bought my own boat down this very river.
Just typical as we're coming into the Thames, as we look across at the Isle of Grain. A little bit of a chop, Thames chop. Get used to it if you come to the Thames in your own boat. But otherwise it's a nice smooth sea. This has certainly been a very pleasant trip so far. And now as we begin the journey through the Thames estuary down into the Thames itself, and we'll look out for some of the sights of London.
As the evening began drawing in, we passed the London Gateway port, a port that had been built on the former Shell haven and one that I hadn't seen from the river before. This is one of the few deep water berths in the UK capable of taking some of the larger ships such as Maersk Emma. The onboard tour guide was excellent in giving facts and figures out about all the buildings and points of interest along the route. The pilot changed again as we proceeded down the river, and we transitioned from the sea reach into the Thames River itself.
Estuary pilot, George Snapshot, and he'll be leaving us now here at Grange End, and the river pilot will look after shipping right up to central London. River pilot will come on board to help us navigate up towards Tower Pier. Yes.
It's not John Green.
That's John Reed.
It doesn't look like John Green. It's usually red in the face and quite fat.
Starboard side, just and they try come alongside this berth and put their stern vans down.
As we pushed on down the river past Tilbury, I was amazed at how many ships we passed that saluted us with a quick blast of a horn and plenty of waves. But as the evening drew closer, the magnificent Queen Elizabeth II Bridge over the River Thames came into view. I'd previously been under this bridge some 15 years before, in my own boat at the time, when I made my way down to St Catherine's Dock, but this evening it looked somewhat magnificent with the sun behind it. The last slithers of daylight slipped away and darkness started falling. It was a real privilege to go down the river at night time and see how much has changed over just such a short space of time. Bar the odd barge carrying waste and the clippers carrying people, gone are the trading ships that were so common along these banks and shores. We slipped through the Thames barrier and then onto Canary Wharf and Greenwich and other such famous landmarks, and before long our destination of Tower Bridge came into view. Entrance to St Catherine's Dock just there, and the Royal Navy Yacht Club just behind.
Ladies and gentlemen, Waverley will shortly be coming alongside London Tower Pier. Could all passengers please prepare to disembark and have all your tickets ready for collection at the gangway. In the interest of safety, we ask all passengers to please be aware that there may be some sudden movement at the ship there. Just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, due to the rearrangement of Tower Pier, it will be quite a long and drawn out process to disembark you this evening. Thank you all once again for sailing aboard Waverley today. Very much hope you've enjoyed your cruise with us, and we hope to see you again. And just a reminder that Waverley's season on the Thames does continue until October the 8th. Thank you all once again, and have a very good evening and good night to you all.
Hey everybody, thanks ever so much for watching. This is just a quick footnote to say that at the time of editing this video, we thought this would be the only excursion that Waverley would be doing on the East Coast for some time. But the good news is Waverley Excursions have decided to include London and the Thames Estuary again in their 2024 itinerary, which means that between Friday the 27th of September and Sunday the 13th of October, there will be sailings from Southwold, Ipswich and many other ports around the Thames Estuary. Check out their website, waverleyexcursions.co.uk for more information, and happy sailing.